Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Channel Dad Reads. Well, let's see if I can read this article from CheatSheet.com. And, people have been saying Tom Holland seems to be a bit of a fan himself of these movies and kind of annoyed about different things. And here we are back with more Spider-Man exit from the MCU. And I'm guessing that there's some kind of stupid nonsense that Sony's pulling again, but we'll see. Arguably one of the greatest moments in Tom Holland and Bob Iger's career involved a halfway drunken phone call last year of the former begging later to keep Spider-Man in the MCU. Yep. Yeah, even if it was unconventional for an approach, it obviously worked, leading Iger to call Sony and work out a deal. While the deal gave Spider-Man a few more movies, nobody really knows what happens after that. Yeah, well, Sony does dumb things that somehow gets away with them. They somehow, they don't lose out so much, unlike Disney. Iger's been making some bad decisions, and Disney's bleeding cash. The time of the next Spider-Man movies will be here before anyone knows it. If no deal is reached to further extend, maybe the Spider-Man franchise will move on to Sony anyway. Well, a few more movies. I don't think the MCU is going to last much longer through Phase 5. It's going to be tough to get through Phase 4. There's enough goodwill and enough things with the movies they do have, they can kind of be able to be coasting. But when they go to change gears in 5, they're going to have to downshift. And I think they're going to have to way downsize, and we're just going to get it's almost like we'll get a soft reset. They won't kill off a bunch of characters. We'll just get a soft reset. If Holland had his way, Spider-Man would stay in the MCU. Well, that's good. Based on recent comments from Holland, he's thought all along his version of Spider-Man, Peter Parker, needed to stay put in the MCU. I would agree because of what's been built. He is so distraught about Sony having to deal with the franchise. His now legendary phone call. Okay. Or play to move mountains. The funny thing is, Holland has also expressed support towards Sony and what they could possibly do with Spidey. Well, of course, he's trying to keep his job, and I think this is a good way to go about it. He's being supportive. He's trying to bring the parties together. I think the fans want to see him in the MCU, at least now and then. And with the big phase over, if you will, and the big hitters moving on in various ways, I think they're going to have Spider-Man to kind of go against Captain Marvel, and I don't mean in a combative tone, but just in personality and kind of being the two pillars of the team, if you will. What probably spooked Holland was the risk involved in changing direction. Also at stake was the creative team behind Spider-Man at the MCU. Nothing can beat having Kevin Feige at the helm, since his profound understanding of the story will make the MCU soar for years to come. I doubt it. I think it's starting to run low on steam. I mean, I could be wrong, and this thing could go for another 10, 15 years, but I don't think so. Maybe 5. And I think that basically we're really going to get fatigued out. I know there's a lot of other characters we can get to, but we're getting down into tertiary characters outside of Spider-Man. Since it's likely to be another year and a half before the MCU Spider-Man movie is released. Okay, so it's complete. Maybe Holland will feel differently. MCU trilogy. What MCU trilogy? So for fans, the whole, there's some more. We're almost done. A point of contention is being able to complete his new Spider-Man trilogy. Okay. Now at its halfway point, so with Far From Home, what I don't understand is these movies I guess they're doing fairly well with normies, but Spider-Man fans, they don't like the original Sam Raimi films are better. Now, Spider-Man 3, yep, we can all agree was crap. But that, again, it's when Sony stuck their nose in and started screwing around with what they wanted to do. That was supposed to be, I think, at least 2 movies. And then we get The Amazing Spider-Man, which shows Sony doesn't know what the heck they're doing with Spider-Man. And now we have this. But a lot of people do not like the rewrites that they've done with so many different characters. It's going to be one of the most important Spider-Man stories told so far. Okay, after all, with Peter Parker now exposed as Spider-Man, no thanks to Mephisto. That's a different comic book. It's going to test the limits of Parker can do to fix things. What happens will likely set up what comes next. Perhaps cameos and Sony films first. Then there's that solo film to set things up further for what? Why would he be doing cameos in Sony films? I think on the multiverse, Sony already broached. I think the multiverse is going to spill on the MCU too. Having Tom Holland become part of the Spider-Verse franchise would certainly be worth doing once done with the MCU arc. Then again, Holland may feel trepidation of polling. If polling discovers fans want Spider-Man, I think they want him in the MCU. I don't think they want that multicultural bullshit that is Spider-Man over at Sony. Will Bob Chapek broker an extended MCU Sony deal? So we have the new Bob coming in after the shock of Bob Iger stepping down. It's a shock to no one. If you were paying attention, Iger's been making a lot of hints, maybe the timing, but he's been doing a lot of hints that he's leaving. And, you don't write your memoirs when you're staying for another 10 years. You do that. You either do it right after you step out the door or right before. And he did it right before last summer. And this makes perfect sense. It's no doubt it has many wondering what Spider-Man's far off future is at the MCU. A lot of that's going to depend on the fans. Chapek, I guess, has to inherit all of that and plan out the next decade. Yeah, the big mess he's got is LucasFilm. I think Sony has a chance to really take advantage of Disney here, and because Chapek has got a big, huge mess at LucasFilm. Huge. That is a big hole into which money is going and seeping. And the shareholders are not happy. The board is not happy. You're going to see Kathleen Kennedy gone probably soon, although she'll step down very gracefully, hopefully. She's threatened to burn it down. But with this, Bob can say, hey, we're restructuring. You're not part of the plans and you're gone. What happens if Chapek eventually lets Spider-Man go from the MCU? I don't think he'll do that unless he gets snookered by Sony. That's why I'm saying he is going to be so, there's going to be so much attention over at Lucasfilm that I think you're going to see Feige and Sony work some stuff out, and Bob's just going to say, yep, as long as we're making money, sounds good, go. But the Lucasfilm is just going to take up all his time. What happens if Chapek eventually lets? Oh, I read that. If staying at the MCU feels comfortable and has emotional ties, I think the only way that that Spider-Man gets pulled out. Why isn't Enchanted on Disney Plus? I don't know. That's an old movie. I think if Sony reboots Spider-Man, that's how they'll leave it out of the MCU. It's also keeping some kind of connective strings to the original Avengers, no matter if Peter Parker having a few flashbacks with his new reality. Yeah, and that's fine. I still think you're going to get some kind of multiverse spillover into the MCU. My personal theory is, as Channel Dad says, if things don't go well near the end of Phase 4 and we get into Phase 5, I would not be surprised we get some kind of multiverse fold over. And that's a way to bring Iron Man and Captain America back. And maybe even correct Thor. And we'll see. But there's some multiverse stuff with Doctor Strange coming up. And we'll see how that plays out. But if things don't look good, we could have a respilling. Or a way to, recast those characters. So they find somebody younger but charismatic as Robert. Or a way to kind of carry a presence like Chris Evans did with Captain America. They'll look different, and they can just chalk it up to the multiverse, similar to what they did in the parallel universes in the DC on the TV show when they brought actors who had played Superman in the past suddenly folded into the DC TV universe. And that was part of the multiverse piece there. So I wouldn't be surprised we see something like that. If things don't go well, I really think Phase 5, you're going to see the big rumor is we're going to get A-Force, and we may, and if that doesn't go very well, you may see just kind of a dispersal in some superhero movies. So we get into 5, the last half of 5, and if there is really a Phase 6, I think we're going to kind of go back to the early days when we have 2, maybe 3 at most, standalone movies, and they just kind of move apart for a while before possibly coming back together. I could be very wrong. And the MCU could go on for another 30 years, but I don't think so. I think the energy's not there from the audience. It's starting to wane a lot. Endgame was a huge bookend, and you had so many characters step away, so many actors step away, some, killed, some gone forever. That's another way they can bring Natasha back was with a multiverse fold over, and bring Scarlett Johansson back into the MCU through the alternate, Earth 32 or whatever. I know it's a DC thing. Go ahead and comment below. I don't care, but it's not a boomer moment. I know what I'm talking about. So, there we go. that's how I see it. I think that we're going to get an end to the MCU. I think I think Sony's just going to honor this. They're going to write it out, and then they're going to see the way Sony goes. They probably will reboot Spider-Man. So Tom Holland is probably in his last, I'd say 5 years, unless things just explode money wise. They'll wait. They'll reboot it, and they'll bring it back into their side, and then the MCU will be done. And then we'll get, Captain Marvel 3. We'll get Miss Marvel as Kamala Khan. We'll get A-Force 1, 2, and 3. We'll get several other movies that no one cares about. And maybe we'll get a Black Panther 3 that won't suck. And a third... I think we're going to get a Wasp movie with no Ant-Man. Maybe probably 2, if not 3 of those. And then we'll get another Doctor Strange. And then that'll be all it. They'll fold all the white males out, and it'll just be minorities and female, if at all. But I think really by the time we get to end of Phase 5, I think it's going to be so tiring. They're going to have to take a break. And then who knows? Maybe they'll reboot it or whatever, or they'll just let it be. In many ways, this was the MCU was really a one-time event. I don't think we're going to see this for a long, long time. Not to the extent that we got, not to the blockbuster level, not with all the planning. It's a lot of energy. It's very, very tough to keep it going. It's going to fizzle out. It's going to, I think we've already seen the pinnacle. It's going to fizzle out eventually. It's going to kind of just fade away. And then maybe, who knows, maybe the next generation in, 40, 50 years, we'll get some kind of inter-universe thing again. We'll see. All right. Well, that's how I see it as Channel Dad Bryon Lape. Let me know in the comments below. You think I'm full of it? You think I'm just having boomer moments? I think I read that a little bit better. I'm trying to get faster with these, and which means my speech gets all discombobulated. People love it when I make mistakes, and they'll point it out. And I'm not trying to make mistakes, but I do. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for subscribing and getting to the end of this diatribe. And please click that thumbs up button because it really, really helps. Thank you very much. Goodbye. My allergies are bothering the crap out of me today. That's what happens when it gets warmer. Awesome sauce. 3, 2, 1.